Silent thunder. The iron shackles burned against Naya's wrist as the auctioneer shoved her forward. Dust swirled across the wooden platform, mixing with the stench of whiskey and sweat from the crowd below. 40 men, maybe 50, pressed closer to the auction block in the center of Dead Ridge, Dakota territory. Their eyes crawled over her like insects. "Damaged goods, gentlemen," the auctioneer shouted, his tobacco-stained grin wide and ugly. "But she's strong. Good for labor. Got all her teeth." He grabbed Nia's jaw, forcing her mouth open. She didn't resist. Resistance only made things worse. Her dark eyes stared past him, past the jeering faces, toward the distant mountains where freedom lived in stories she'd heard as a child. "Can't talk, though," the auctioneer continued, releasing her face with a dismissive shove. Mute as a stone. "Some say she's cursed, but at this price, who's complaining?" Laughter rippled through the crowd. Nia's fingers curled into fists, her only remaining defiance. 3 auction blocks in 4 months, 3 towns, each one worse than the last. The brand on her shoulder still ached from the last owner who deemed her worthless when she wouldn't scream. $50, a voice called out. A rancher with cruel eyes and rougher hands. 60, another man, wearing a deputy's badge that meant nothing in a lawless territory. Nia felt her breath shallow. Her heart hammered against her ribs. She learned not to hope, not to pray. Hope died somewhere on the Mississippi River when they torn her from her mother's arms. Prayer died in the hold of a ship where screams went unanswered. 75. The bidding climbed. The auctioneer's excitement grew. Then the crowd went silent. A figure moved through the mass of bodies like water parting. Tall, broad-shouldered. His long black hair was pulled back, revealing a face carved from stone and determination. Traditional Lakota clothing marked him immediately as an outsider in this settler town. Beadwork and leather against a sea of dirty cotton and wool. The auctioneer's smile faltered. "Now hold on. $200. The man's voice cut through the tension like a blade. He spoke English perfectly, his accent minimal, his tone absolute. "Gold." Gasps erupted. $200 could buy a house, horses, a future. For a mute woman branded as defective, it was insanity. "You can," the deputy started. "I can." The Lakota man's dark eyes fixed on the auctioneer with the weight of mountains. "Do you accept, or do I take my gold elsewhere?" The auctioneer licked his lips, greed wrestling with prejudice. Gold won. It always did. "Sold." As the crowd erupted in outrage and confusion, the stranger stepped onto the platform. He met Nia's eyes for the first time. What she saw there made her heart stutter. Not lust, not cruelty, recognition. As if he saw not property, but a person. "My name is Dakota," he said quietly, unlocking her shackles with the key he'd somehow obtained. "You're free now." Nia's eyes widened. Free. A word she'd forgotten existed. The shackles fell away. The horse beneath Nia moved with the steady rhythm that should have been comforting. It wasn't. 3 days of riding west from Dead Ridge, and she still couldn't understand why Lakota had saved her. Men didn't spend fortunes without expecting something in return. She'd learned that lesson in blood and bruises. Yet Dakota rode ahead in silence, never looking back, never demanding. He'd given her his second horse, provisions, and a blanket without ceremony. At night, he built 2 fires, one for himself, one for her, maintaining a respectful distance that confused her more than kindness ever had. On the 4th morning, the landscape shifted. Rolling grasslands gave way to dense forests. The air tasted different here. Cleaner somehow, untouched by the rot of frontier towns. Nia noticed teepees rising in the distance, smoke curling from cooking fires. Her chest tightened. Lakota finally turned to face her. "My people," he said simply, "the Oglala Lakota, this is home." As they entered the village, faces appeared. Women paused their work. Children stopped playing. Warriors stood straighter, their expressions unreadable. Nia felt every eye measuring her, judging her, an outsider. Twice over, a woman emerged from the largest teepee, her bearing regal despite the simplicity of her doe-skin dress. She was perhaps 30, with sharp features and sharper eyes that cut straight to Nia before fixing on Dakota. "Brother," she said, her English flawless but edged with ice. "You returned with a stranger, Winona." Dakota dismounted, his posture respectful but firm. I returned with someone who needed help. Someone or something you purchased. Winona circled Nia's horse slowly. The council will want answers. You spent tribal resources on. My own goal, Dakota interrupted. Earned from trading furs, not tribal resources. An elderly man approached, his face a map of deep lines and deeper wisdom. White hair hung in long braids decorated with eagle feathers. Despite his age, he moved with quiet strength. Dakota, the elder said, I am Chayton, keeper of our stories. Your sister speaks from concern, not cruelty. We have lost much to the Wasaku, the white man. Trust comes slowly now. Dakota helped Nia dismount. She stood on trembling legs, acutely aware of how foreign she must appear. Her torn dress, her branded shoulder, her silence, everything marked her as damaged goods even here. She was being sold to men who would have destroyed her, Dakota said, his voice carrying across the gathering crowd. I saw in her eyes what I saw in our people's eyes when the soldiers came to Sand Creek. I saw someone surviving against impossible odds. I could not walk away. Silence fell heavy. Nia knew about Sand Creek. Everyone on the frontier knew. 3 years ago, Colorado militia had massacred peaceful Cheyenne and Arapaho families, mostly women and children. The massacre had ignited warfare across the plains, turning trust into ash. Winona's expression softened slightly, but suspicion remained. Can she even communicate? Or did you buy a broken bird who cannot sing? Nia's hands moved before thought caught up. She pointed to herself, then made a series of gestures, drawing in the air, touching her chest over her heart, pointing to the mountains. It was crude sign language, self-taught, but meaning emerged. I am here. I am real. I seek peace. Chayton's eyes widen. She speaks with her hands. Not Lakota sign, but close enough. He stepped closer to Nia, studying her face. You have seen darkness, child. It lives in your eyes, but so does strength. He turned to Dakota. She may stay, but she must earn her place as all do. And you, Dakota, will be responsible for her actions. Over the following weeks, Nia discovered a world nothing like the one she'd known. The Lakota people moved with purpose and community that felt foreign after years of isolation and cruelty. Women worked together tanning hides, their laughter genuine. Children played without fear. Men hunted and told stories, their bonds forged through shared survival. Winona assigned Nia to help gather medicinal plants with the healers. It was a test, obviously. But as Nia worked, muscle memory returned. Her grandmother in Georgia had taught her about herbs before the slave catchers came. Roots for fever, bark for pain, leaves for wounds. When an elder healer, Aita, showed her a plant Nia didn't recognize, Nia sketched in the dirt with a stick. She drew a different plant with similar properties, one that grew in the south. Aita's eyes lit with understanding. You know healing, Aita said softly. Your knowledge is different, but true. That night, Nia sat near the communal fire, still apart but no longer completely isolated. Dakota appeared beside her, offering a bowl of stew. She took it hesitantly. You don't have to be afraid here, he said, settling onto the ground at a respectful distance. Winona is protective, but she'll see your worth. Chayton already does. Nia met his eyes, then looked away. She pulled out a small leather journal he'd given her, blank pages for the words she couldn't speak. Slowly, she wrote, Why did you save me? Dakota read the question in the firelight. His jaw tightened. 5 years ago, soldiers raided our winter camp. They took my wife, Kamama, and our daughter, sold them to settlers heading west. I searched for 2 years, found only graves. Pain lanced through Nia's chest. She wrote, I'm sorry. When I saw you on that platform, Dakota continued. I saw Kimama's eyes, that same look, refusing to break even when the world demanded it. I couldn't save her, but I could save you. Nia's hand trembled as she wrote, I am not her. No, Dakota agreed. You are Nia, and that's enough. For the first time in years, Nia felt tears on her cheeks. Not tears of pain, but something else, something dangerous. Hope. But hope, she knew, made you vulnerable. And in a world balanced on the edge of war, vulnerability could get you killed. 6 weeks after her arrival, Nia sat beside Ayita grinding herbs into paste. Her hands worked with practiced efficiency, mixing yarrow and sage for wound treatment. Around them, the village hummed with early autumn preparations. Women dried meat for winter. Men strengthened teepee poles and checked weapons. Weapons. Always weapons now. Winona approached, her expression less hostile than before but still guarded. "The hunting party returns," she announced. "Lakota brings deer. We'll feast tonight." Nia nodded, offering a small smile. She'd learned that Winona's coldness came from loss. Her husband killed by cavalry soldiers 2 winters past. Trust wasn't withheld from cruelty. It was withheld from survival. The hunting party emerged from the tree line, and Nia's breath caught. Lakota rode at the front, powerful and commanding. Something had shifted between them over the weeks. Glances that lingered too long. His hand steady in hers when teaching her to ride better. The way he smiled when she successfully communicated complex ideas through drawings and gestures. But before celebration could begin, a scout burst into camp on a lathered horse, his face grave. "Lakota," the young warrior called. "Wasaku coming, armed. Maybe 20 men." The village transformed instantly. Warriors grabbed rifles and bows. Women ushered children into teepees. Chayton emerged, his weathered face set in stone. Lakota dismounted swiftly. "How far?" "1 hour, maybe less." "They carry a white flag, but also many guns. A trap," Winona hissed. "Perhaps," Chayton said. "Or perhaps they fear us as much as we fear them. Lakota, you will meet them with 6 warriors. Show strength, but allow talk first." Nia's chest constricted. She grabbed Lakota's arm before thought caught reason. His eyes met hers, questioning. She pulled out her journal, writing frantically. "Dead Ridge men?" "Possibly," Lakota said quietly. "If they've come for you, they'll leave empty-handed." The words should have comforted her. Instead, dread coiled in her stomach like a snake. An hour later, the armed group arrived at the village perimeter. Lakota stood with his warriors, positioned between the outsiders and his people. Nia watched from behind a teepee, Ayita's hand on her shoulder in solidarity. At the front of the Wasaku group rode a man Nia recognized immediately, Marshal Clayton Briggs, tall, clean-shaven with eyes like frozen lakes. He'd been at the auction, the one who bid $60. The one whose badge meant nothing but whose cruelty meant everything. "Chief Lakota," Briggs called out, his voice carrying false friendliness. "We come in peace. I'm Marshal Briggs, representing Dead Ridge in the territorial government." "You come heavily armed for peace," Lakota replied, his English perfect, his tone ice. Briggs smiled, but it never reached his eyes. "Dangerous territory. I'm sure you understand. We're here about property that was illegally obtained from a legal auction 6 weeks ago. I purchased a woman with gold. Legal payment, legal transaction." "That's where you're wrong, Chief." Briggs pulled out a folded paper. "According to territorial law, Indians cannot own property that includes other human chattel. The purchase is void. The girl returns with us." Nia felt the world tilt. Ayita's grip tightened. Lakota didn't move. "She is not property. She is free. She's a runaway slave, recovered in Missouri, legally processed through our auction system. Now you've stolen her, and I'm here to correct that theft." Briggs gestured to his men. "Hand her over, and we'll forget this happened. Refuse, and we'll return with the cavalry. Your choice." The threat hung in the air like smoke. Everyone knew what cavalry meant. More sand creeks. More massacres disguised as law enforcement. Chayton stepped forward. "You speak of law, but your law is a weapon used to justify theft of our land, murder of our people. Why should we honor law that does not honor us?" "Careful, old man," Briggs warned. "I'm trying to be reasonable." "Reasonable?" Winona spat, appearing beside her brother. "You know nothing of that word." Nia couldn't watch anymore. Before anyone could stop her, she stepped into view, walking toward the confrontation with her head high. Gases erupted behind her. Lakota's face flashed with alarm, but she kept moving. Briggs' smile widened when he saw her. "There she is. Come along now, girl. Back where you belong." Nia stopped 10 feet from him. She met his eyes and saw the truth there. The same hunger she's seen on the auction block, the same cruelty that had branded her shoulder. This wasn't about law. It was about control, power, breaking what couldn't be owned. She shook her head slowly, deliberately. She refuses, Lakota said, moving to stand beside her, and I support her refusal. Briggs's false friendliness evaporated. You're making a mistake. I'll return with federal troops. They'll burn this village to ash. It's all because you want to protect one defective slave who can't even talk. Nia's hands trembled, but she pulled out her journal. She wrote quickly, then held it up for everyone to see. Not slave, not property, human. Briggs laughed. Human? That's rich. Tell me, girl, if you're so human, why can't you scream? The words hit like a physical blow. Nia's hand went to her throat, to the scars hidden beneath her collar. Briggs knew. Somehow, he knew. Your previous owner mentioned the incident. Briggs continued, his voice dripping with malice. Said you stopped screaming after he taught you a lesson about obedience. Said you stopped talking altogether. Made you worthless for certain. Services. Lakota's hand went to his knife. Leave. Now. Oh, I'll leave, Briggs said, wheeling his horse around. But I'll be back in 2 weeks with enough soldiers to bury this whole settlement. Unless you want to reconsider. He looked directly at Nia. All this death, girl, will be on your silent tongue. The armed group rode away, dust rising in their wake. Nia collapsed to her knees. Not from fear, from rage. Burning, helpless rage at a world that turned people into property and called it law. At men like Briggs, who wielded power like weapons against the powerless. Lakota knelt beside her. We'll fight them. You're worth fighting for. She looked up at him, tears streaming down her face. She wrote in the dirt with her finger. Too many will die. Then we find another way, Shaden said, approaching with Winona. But we do not surrender. Not you, not our dignity, not our right to protect those who seek sanctuary. That night, as the village council debated strategy, Nia made a decision. She would not be the reason these people died. She would not be another massacre's cause. But she also would not return the chains. There had to be a third option, and somewhere in the darkness of her stolen voice, she would find it. The council fire burned low as voices rose in debate. Nia sat outside the circle, as was custom for non-tribe members, but close enough to hear every word. Lakota argued passionately for fortification. Winona demanded they send messengers to allied tribes. Chayton counseled patience and wisdom. We cannot win against cavalry, a warrior named Tokola said, his voice heavy with experience. I fought at the greasy grass, what they call Little Bighorn. We won that day, but victory only brought more soldiers, more death. So we surrender? Winona snapped. We give them Nia and prove that we bow to their every demand. We prove we survive, Tokola countered. Survival is not surrender. Survival without honor is death, Lakota said quietly. My wife died because I couldn't protect her. I won't fail again. The words silenced the council. Even Winona looked away. Chayton stood, firelight casting deep shadows across his face. This is not about one woman. This is about whether we allow the Wasiku to define who deserves protection. Today it is Nia. Tomorrow it will be our children again. Where does the bowing end? Nia couldn't bear it anymore. She rose and walked away from the council fire, into the darkness beyond the village. Her chest felt too tight, her mind too loud. People were going to die because of her. Because one corrupt marshal wanted to prove his power. She didn't hear Lakota follow until his voice came from behind her. You shouldn't be alone out here. Nia turned, moonlight catching the tears on her cheeks. She pulled out her journal, but her hand shook too badly to write. Lakota approached slowly, giving her space. You're thinking of leaving. Going back to him. Her eyes widened. How did he know? Because it's what I would think, he continued. Sacrifice yourself to save others. But Nia, if you go back, Briggs wins. Not just against you, against all of us. He proves that power and cruelty always triumph. She finally managed to write, better than watching children die. Is it? Takadora moved closer. Aida told me something yesterday. She said you've been teaching the young girls about healing plants. Little Kimmy Mella follows you everywhere now. learning. You've given her hope that she can be valuable beyond marriage and children. You've given her a future. Nia's throat constricted. Kimmy Mella, barely 8 years old with bright eyes and endless questions. If you surrender to Briggs, Lakota said, what lesson does that teach her? That some people are worth saving and some aren't? That silence means worthlessness? New tears came, hot and angry. Nia wrote furiously, I can't speak, can't defend myself, can't even tell the truth about what Briggs really is. She stopped, pen hovering. The truth about what Briggs really is. Lakota saw her expression change. What is it? Nia's mind raced. Briggs had mentioned her previous owner. He'd known about her scars, about what happened to her voice. How did a frontier marshal know such specific details unless he'd been involved in the trafficking from the beginning? She wrote quickly, Briggs, not just marshal. He's part of the slave trade. That's why he wants me back. I saw things, know things. Lakota read the words, his jaw tightening. What kind of things? Nia's hand trembled as she drew. She sketched a map from memory, the route she'd been transported along, town, names, faces of men who bought and sold human beings like cattle. She wrote locations, dates, details she'd memorized as a survival mechanism, never knowing they might become weapons. This is evidence, Lakota breathed, evidence of a trafficking network. If the territorial government knew, Nia shook her head violently. She wrote, government doesn't care. Need federal. Need proof that would destroy him completely. Then we find that proof, Lakota said. We have 2 weeks before Briggs returns. We use that time. A new voice emerged from the shadows. Use it for what? Winona stepped into the moonlight, her expression unreadable. Behind her came chasing. You followed us, Lakota said. You think I let my brother wander off with our guests during dangerous times? She looked at Nia's journal. What did I miss? Lakota explained. Chayton listened intently, his wise eyes growing sharper. A network, the elder mused. Not just one corrupt man, but many, like a spider's web across the territory. If we could prove it, Lakota said, bring it to federal authorities. The federal authorities who allow it to happen, Winona interrupted, who profit from it. Not all of them, Chayton said slowly. There are Wasakyu, who fight against slavery. We heard of their war, their Lincoln. Some still believe in justice. He turned to Nia. Could you identify the others involved? Draw their faces? Nia nodded. She could draw them in her sleep. They haunted her dreams. Then we need someone who can take this evidence where it matters, Chayton said. Someone the federal government will listen to. Lakota's eyes lit up. Samuel Garrett, the circuit judge. He presided over treaty negotiations 2 years ago. He was fair, honest. He's based in Fort Laramie. 3 days hard ride, Winona calculated, through hostile territory. I'll go, Lakota said immediately. No, Winona's voice was firm. You're needed here. If Briggs returns early, the people need their war chief. I'll go. Sister, I'm faster than you, better at avoiding cavalry patrols, and I speak English well enough to present evidence. Winona's expression softened slightly. Let me do this, brother. Let me protect our home. Chayton nodded. Wisdom speaks through Winona, but she should not go alone. I'll send Tokala with her, Lakota said. He knows the route. For the next 3 days, Nia worked feverishly. She drew faces, sketched maps, wrote every detail she could remember. Names of buyers, locations of auctions, the underground rooms where people were kept, the brands they used, the routes they traveled. Kimimela sat beside her, watching in solemn silence as the horror of Nia's past spilled on the paper. On the third evening, Winona prepared to leave. She found Naida in Aita's lodge, surrounded by pages of evidence. This is good work, Winona said, examining the drawings. Thorough. Damning. Nia wrote, thank you for believing me. I didn't believe you at first, Winona admitted. I saw you as a threat. Another way for the Wasakyu to hurt us. But you've proven your worth, Nia. Not through silence or submission, but through strength. She paused. If I don't return, Nia grabbed her hand, shaking her head firmly. Winona smiled faintly. If I don't return, know that this fight was worth it. You are worth it. As Winona and Tokola rode into the darkness, carrying evidence that could destroy Briggs's empire, Nia felt something shift inside her. For years, she'd believed herself powerless. Voiceless meant worthless, but power didn't require sound. Truth didn't need volume, and sometimes the most dangerous weapon was a silent witness who refused to forget. 10 days until Briggs returned. 10 days to pray Winona reached the judge in time. 10 days for Nia to prepare for the possibility that justice might arrive too late, and survival will require one final terrible choice. Day 12. Still no word from Winona. Nia stood at the village edge, scanning the horizon for riders that never came. Behind her, warriors fortified defensive positions. Women hid valuables and prepared escape routes for the children. Everyone moved with quiet efficiency born from experience. This wasn't their first time preparing for annihilation. Lakota approached, his face drawn. Scouts report movement. Briggs is coming. 30 men this time, all armed. They'll be here by tomorrow morning. Nia's stomach dropped. She wrote, Winona? No sign. Takota's jaw clenched. Something went wrong. We have to assume she won't return in time. The words hit like bullets. Nia had sent Winona to possible death. Another person destroyed because of her existence. That night, sleep refused to come. Nia lay in her lodge, staring at the ceiling, listening to the village prepare for war. Children's whispered questions, mothers soothing lies. Warriors checking weapons with grim determination. She couldn't let this happen. An hour before dawn, Nia rose and dressed. She gathered a few belongings, including the journal Lakota had given her. On the last page, she wrote a letter. To Lakota, to Aita, to little Kimmy Mela. Words she'd never spoken aloud but needed to exist somewhere. Then she slipped into the pre-dawn darkness, heading toward Dead Ridge. She made it 3 miles before Lakota found her. Did you really think I wouldn't notice? His voice came from the shadows, more hurt than angry. Nia spun around. Shh. He stood there, still armed, his horse behind him. You were going to surrender, he said. Trade yourself for the village's safety. She pulled out her journal, writing by moonlight. Only way. Can't let them die for me. And what happens to you? Briggs will destroy you. Whatever horrors you escaped before will be nothing compared to what he'll do. I know, she wrote. But I'll survive. I always do. Surviving isn't living. Takota's voice cracked. Kimama survived 3 months of captivity before she died. Every day was torture. She survived until she couldn't anymore. He stepped closer. I won't watch that happen to you. Nia's eyes burned. She wrote, Then don't watch. Let me go. No. The single word held such finality. Nia shook her head, frustrated tears coming. She wrote frantically, You don't understand. Everyone I love dies. My mother sold away when I was 10. My grandmother beaten to death. The girl who helped me escape the ship drowned. I am poisoned, Lakota. I destroy everything I touch. Lakota read the words, then looked up at her with such intensity she couldn't breathe. You didn't destroy me, he said quietly. You saved me, gave me purpose again after years of emptiness. You didn't destroy Aida. You became her apprentice, her legacy. You didn't destroy Kimmy Miller. You gave her dreams of becoming a healer. He moved closer. You think you're poison? Nah, you're medicine. The painful kind that burns before it heals, but medicine nonetheless. Nia's hands trembled too badly to write. Lakota gently took the journal from her. I'm going to tell you something, he said, and you're going to listen. After Kimama died, I wanted to die too. I picked fights I couldn't win, took risks no sane warrior would take. I was drowning in grief, and I welcomed it. He paused, his voice roughening. Then I saw you on that auction block, and something in your eyes, that refusal to break despite everything broken around you. It reminded me why life matters, why fighting matters. You gave me back my reason to breathe. Nia felt something crack open inside her chest. She reached for her journal, but Lakota held it back. No more writing, he said. Just listen. I love you, Nia. I don't care that you can't speak. I don't care about your scars or your past. I love the woman who teaches children about healing plants, who sits with elders and learns our language through gestures, who looks at mountains like they hold answers. His voice dropped to a whisper. I love the woman strong enough to walk into hell to save others, but I won't let you walk alone. Tears streamed down Nia's face. She touched his cheek, then pointed to herself and shook her head. Not worthy, not enough. You're everything, Dakota said, understanding. And we face this together. We find another way. A sound shattered the moment. Hoofbeats, coming fast from the west. Both of them turned, weapons ready. A rider burst through the trees. Tokala, his face bloodied, his horse nearly collapsed from exhaustion. The village, he gasped, now. Winona. They raced back, arriving as the sun crested the horizon. The village stood in tense formation, weapons raised, but they weren't facing Briggs's men. Federal cavalry had arrived, 50 soldiers, maybe more, surrounding the perimeter. And at the center, dismounting from her horse with a bloody shoulder but triumphant eyes, stood Winona. Beside her stood a gray-haired man in a suit, Samuel Garrett, the circuit judge, and behind him, in chains, Marshal Clayton Briggs and 6 of his men. Nia's legs nearly gave out. Winona spotted Dakota and Nia, managing a pained smile. Sorry we're late. Ran into Briggs's advanced scouts. Had to fight our way through. She touched her wounded shoulder. But we made it. Judge Garrett stepped forward, his weathered face grave but just. I've reviewed the evidence Miss Winona provided. Marshal Briggs and his associates are under arrest for human trafficking, conspiracy, and corruption. I've issued warrants for 17 more men across 3 territories. Briggs struggled against his chains, his face purple with rage. You can't do this. I have rights. I have connections. You have a date with the gallows, Garrett said coldly, and I'll personally ensure you reach it. The judge turned to Nia, his expression softening. Miss, I understand you've suffered greatly. If you're willing to testify, in writing given your condition, your testimony could help dismantle this entire network, save others from the same fate. Nia looked at Dakota. He nodded, pride shining in his eyes. She stepped forward and took the journal Dakota offered. In clear, steady handwriting she wrote, I will testify. I will tell everything, and I will watch him hang. Briggs lunged toward her, but soldiers restrained him. You think this changes anything? He snarled. You're still nothing. Still broken. Still, Nia held up her hand, silencing him with a gesture more powerful than any words. Then, she turned her back on him, dismissing him as completely as he'd once dismissed her humanity. As the cavalry prepared to transport the prisoners, Chayton approached Judge Garrett. What happens to Nia now? Legally? Garrett looked at the evidence, then at Nia. Given that the auction was conducted by criminals as part of an illegal trafficking operation, I declare the sale null and void. Miss Nia is a free woman under federal law. She may go where she chooses. Nia looked around at the village, at Aita's proud smile, at Kimamela's excited jumping, at Winona's respectful nod, at Dakota, standing beside her like he'd never leave. She wrote in her journal and held it up for everyone to see. I choose to stay. 3 months later, the territorial courthouse in Cheyenne was packed beyond capacity. People lined the walls, crowded the doorways, and pressed against the windows. Word had spread across the frontier. The trial of Marshal Clayton Briggs and his trafficking ring was more than a legal proceeding. It was a reckoning. Nia sat in the witness area, Dakota beside her. She wore traditional Lakota clothing now, beaded and beautiful, gifted by the women of the village. Her hair was braided with care. She looked nothing like the terrified woman on the auction block 4 months ago. Judge Garrett presided, his expression stern. Miss Nia, you've provided extensive written testimony. The defense has challenged its validity, claiming written words cannot be cross-examined. Do you have anything to add before I make my ruling? Nia stood, every eye in the courtroom fixed on her. Briggs smirked from the defendant's table, confident that her silence would save him. She walked to the witness stand, her heart hammering. Dakota's encouraging nod gave her strength. So did Winona's presence in the gallery, arms still in a sling but eyes fierce. Ayita and Chayton had traveled 3 days to be here. Even little Kimmy Mella sat in the front row watching her hero. Nia opened her mouth. Nothing came. Years of silence, years of trauma, held her vocal cords captive. Briggs laughed. See? Defective. Worthless. The court should dismiss. Shut your mouth, Judge Garrett snapped. Miss Naya, take your time. Naya closed her eyes. She thought of her mother, singing spirituals in the cotton fields. Her grandmother, teaching her about healing. The girl on the ship who'd whispered courage in the darkness. Kimama, whose strength lived on through Dakota. Winona, who'd risked everything for justice. She thought of every woman silenced by violence. Every child stolen from their family. Every person reduced to property and told they were worthless. She opened her eyes and looked directly at Briggs. Then she spoke. My name. Her voice came out as a rasp, rough from years of disuse, but real, undeniable. My name is Nia Freeman. The courtroom erupted. Gabs, shouts, the slam of the judge's gavel demanding order. Dakota's face showed pure joy. Tears streamed down Aida's weathered cheeks. Briggs's smirk vanished. My name is Nia Freeman, she repeated, her voice growing stronger. I was born free in Georgia. When I was 10 years old, slave catchers came. They didn't care about papers proving my freedom. They burned them and took me anyway. Her throat ached, but she pushed through. I was sold 7 times. Branded, beaten. The last owner, he tried to break me completely. When I screamed, he damaged my throat so badly, the doctor said I'd never speak again. Judge Garrett leaned forward. Take your time, Miss Freeman. I don't need time, Nia said, her voice cracking but fierce. I need justice. Marshall Briggs ran that auction house. He provided the legal cover for trafficking. He knew every victim, every crime, every buyer. She pulled out a ledger. One of the pieces of evidence Winona had secured. His signature is on 53 transactions. 53 human beings sold like cattle. Briggs shot to his feet. Lies. She's lying. The evidence speaks for itself, Judge Garrett said. Sit down, Marshall. Nia continued, her voice gaining power with each word. He came to the Lakota village not to enforce law, but to silence me. I seen too much, knew too much. If I testified, his entire operation would collapse. She looked at him with steady eyes. So here I am, Marshall, testifying. And your empire is already ash. The trial lasted 3 more days. 17 co-conspirators were convicted. The evidence Nia provided led to federal investigations across 5 territories. The trafficking network that had operated for nearly a decade was destroyed. Briggs received the death penalty. His last words before sentencing were curses aimed at Nia. She didn't flinch. She'd heard worse from better men. After the verdict, Judge Garrett approached her privately. Miss Freeman, what you've accomplished here, it will save countless lives. You should be proud. I'm not proud, Nia said quietly, her voice still rough but growing clearer each day. I'm angry. Angry that it took this long. Angry that others suffered while I stayed silent. You weren't silent by choice, Garrett reminded her gently. And now that you found your voice, I suspect you'll use it well. He was right. Over the following year, Nia traveled to courtrooms across the frontier, testifying against trafficking operations. Her voice, broken but unbreakable, sent dozens of criminals to prison. She became known as the Silent Thunder, the woman who'd survived hell and brought heaven's wrath down on her oppressors. But her real life happened in the quiet moments between trials. It happened in the Lakota village, where she trained apprentice healers alongside Aida, where Kimamela grew into a skilled medicine woman under her guidance, where Winona became not just an ally but a sister. It happened in the evenings when she and Dakota sat by the fire, her head on his shoulder, their hands intertwined. Sometimes they talked for hours, sometimes they sat in comfortable silence, but now was a silence of peace, not trauma. 1 year after the trial, Dakota asked her to marry him in the traditional Lakota way. She said yes in English, then learned to say it in Lakota. Her voice grew stronger every day, but she never forgot what silence had taught her. That strength comes in many forms, and sometimes the most powerful resistance is simply refusing to disappear. They married in the spring, surrounded by 2 communities that had learned to trust each other. Federal observers attended, impressed by the harmony. It wasn't perfect. Old hatreds died slowly, and fear lingered like smoke. But it was a beginning. On their wedding night, as stars filled the sky above the prairie, Lakota asked her something he'd wondered for months. When did you know you'd speak again? Nia considered the question, her fingers tracing patterns on his chest. When I realized silence wasn't protecting me anymore, it was protecting them. The men who wanted me erased. She looked up at him. I stayed silent to survive. I found my voice to live. And now I speak for those who can. I speak until every chain is broken and every trafficker hangs. I speak until freedom isn't something purchased, it's something guaranteed. Lakota kissed her forehead. You're going to change this world. We're going to change it, she corrected. Together. Years later, after the frontier became states and the old ways collided with new laws, people still told the story of Silent Thunder, the woman who couldn't speak but shook the foundations of injustice. The Lakota chief who paid gold for freedom and received love. The sister who rode through hell for justice. The communities that chose unity over hatred. Some said it was a legend, an exaggeration, but those who'd been there knew the truth. They seen Mia Freeman stand in that courtroom and reclaim her voice. They'd heard the thunder when silence finally broke, and they never forgot that freedom, real freedom, isn't given, it's fought for, bled for, spoken into existence by those brave enough to shatter their own cages. Nia's voice had been stolen, but she'd taken it back. And once found, that voice would never be silenced again. Asterisk.